This is really interesting. I find myself at an ethical conflict. I want to conduct an interview on my roommate about cognitive dissonance of Trump supporters, but given his mental condition, I feel like there is an ethical boundary that I do not want to cross. I'm not a professional psychologist, so this isn't a violation of the law. This isn't practicing psychology. This is just, personal entertainment and non-professional, non-official research. So technically, the boundaries don't apply to me. However, as a moral boundary, I self apply my own moral boundaries, of course. Yet, he's allowed to vote. He's a Trump supporter. Gullibility screams, right? So, if I am recognizing this ethical boundary, why isn't the government recognizing this ethical boundary and not allowing people that are mentally impaired, be it mental illness or drug use, alcohol, etc., why aren't they not being prohibited to vote? There should be drug testing required on the spot at voter booths. Why isn't there? Because democracy isn't a democracy. It's a bullshit contest. Just like the adversarial court system. It's who's the better bullshitter wins. Whoever can dupe the most people of a population, the largest percentage, gets the most votes. And people are easier to dupe if they smoke marijuana, if they consume alcohol, if they consume drugs, if they have a genetic mental illness, thus genetic predisposition to psychological manipulation and just general psychological malleability. But the interesting thing is this doesn't just apply to people with mental illness and drug use. My professor, in his book, I'm just going to cite it directly here, but I don't want to reference him out of respect, makes the claim that Nazis were behind thalidomide. Going to look it up here real quick. Nazi leaders. Some examples include the research conducted by Nazi leaders in concentration camps, the administration of a drug called thalidomide to pregnant women without informing the women the drug was in experimental testing stage. So, thalidomide was in 1957, 11 years after the fall of the Third Reich. It was from a company called Grünenthal, which was founded by the Wirtz family. Now, if you look up Wirtz, it says German, but if you search deeper, he's actually Jewish, or Jewish family. The Jews behind thalidomide, right? This isn't a moral condemnation of them, by the way. And Israeli scientists later on figured out that thalidomide helps cure and treat leprosy very effectively. So it's still in use today under strict, regulations and observation. But this professor just gave us a whole course on data collection. Your results are only as good as your data. You want to correctly attribute sources, yet he's misrepresenting data falsely. He's blaming the Nazis for the actions of the Jews, but technically Wirtz was a Nazi. He was a Jewish Nazi. He just was not a Nazi when he founded the Grünenthal company and, manufactured and distributed thalidomide. Thalidomide was a huge scandal. You can Google it if you like. But to me, this is another violation of the moral and ethical boundary, right? To falsely attribute negative accountability where it does not belong. Well, I could be wrong. There was a comma there that I did not notice, so it could have been the Nazis' experiments in concentration camps, comma, thalidomide to women who were pregnant. I think I made a mistake on that. I just noticed now with this video. However, the experiments conducted in concentration camps were very beneficial to humanity in general, not just Jews and Gentiles. Well, technically that is humanity, right? Uh, so the countless lives saved by the results produced from the Nazi experiments, why is there no gratitude for that? How many grandmothers and grandchildren would have otherwise died if not for the knowledge gained through those experiments? I wonder if that's where Siamese twin separation first began. I could be wrong, but it may have been. And the Nazis weren't the only ones. The Japanese were experimenting, Soviets were experimenting. Everyone was conducting experiments. And this is a completely different topic here, but a nice segue. Recently, I would get extremely horny, basically out of nowhere. And because I saw the Neurostrike article where China can send signals from your electronic device to manipulate your brainwaves, I'm like, oh, China's planting the horny thoughts in my head through my smartphone. They made a movie about this, the Kingsman Secret Service. But then I thought, what if it's just the fact that my diet and exercise is causing a huge production of testosterone? And generating testosterone is really what's causing this. And there was a third explanation I can't remember. But then I remembered watching a documentary about the Soviet Union, mental hospitals, specifically in the Soviet Union, in I think it was like the 1960s and 1950s. And they figured out a long time ago that certain frequencies can calm the mental patients. Now, if you figured out that certain electronic frequencies, right, these radio wave transmitters that transmit the same things as, other electronic devices do that are not in mental institutions to keep the crazies calm, then you would think, well, certainly they figured that out by also figuring out what can exacerbate it and make it worse and make people angry, sad, lonely, etc. Right? You can cause suicidal depression in someone's mind through their smartphone in a variety of ways. I think Facebook, from what I've heard from my roommate, conducted these same experiments and they figured out they can push people to suicide just by controlling what news they saw on their feed and things like that. So it's interesting that I am self applying moral and ethical boundaries that the government is not. Yet the government's the ones who enforce laws that are based on moral and ethical boundaries, at least in theory.